Hello, everybody, and welcome to the webinar. I'm Joseph Lahiff from Whitewater Projects. I'm happy to be with you here today. Please raise your hand on your little sidebar there if you can hear me now. Can you hear me now? Oops, there we go. I'm having some trouble here. Hold on, please. Can anybody hear me? All right. I don't see any hands going up yet. No one hears me. Can you hear me? I don't know what I'd be changing. Audio. Oh. There we go.
The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
There it is. Okay. I was talking to y'all, and nobody raised their hands when I asked. Can anybody hear me now? Raise your hand on the little sidebar thing there if you can hear me. Thank you, Ed. All right, David. Thank you so much, guys. All right. Well, I'm excited to be with you here today. This is Joseph Lahiff, and we're talking a little bit today about defining the work. This series of 3 webinars called Agile Self-Defense. I'm talking about different problems and things and best practices or good practices that people use in the industry to do Agile. And I was actually just having lunch with a client, and we were literally talking about this right here. And I said, hey, why don't you just join the webinar? And so I'm here with the client, and we're listening to the webinar, or she's listening to me right now. And so if I get questions off the side from her, then you'll get the benefit from hearing that. If you have questions, you can enter them in the questions box there. Please feel free to do that at any time during the webinar. I will try and answer them as much as I can. And if I don't answer them in process when I'm doing it, I'll try and get to them at the end. So stick with me. All right, today we're going to talk about personas, mind mapping, and story maps. So let's get started. There we go. First thing I want to talk about are personas. So when we're doing an Agile project, we manage the requirements differently than we manage the requirements in a traditional project. Traditional project, you have specs and you have the software requirement specifications, and you have various different pieces of documentation. In an Agile project, we try and minimize the documentation. We need documentation, right? Don't get me wrong there. Everybody needs documentation. It's just how much do you need? And so in an Agile project, we try and minimize it and only use just enough, or a phrase that is often used is barely enough. Right? Use barely enough documentation, and that will get you to where you need to be. So when I'm starting out with a team, I'll go through several different phases of work to help them elaborate those requirements that they got and document them in a way that they can use them actively as we go forward through the working of the project. I've been a traditional project manager for many years, probably 12 to 15 years of traditional work before I started doing Agile. And one of the things that happens in traditional is you have these big fat specs that you write that nobody really ends up using, if they even reading. Sometimes they'll read them. Some people will read parts of them. Nobody ever reads the whole thing. But they frequently are not really actively used for any ongoing purpose. And in Agile, we want to keep it as lightweight as we can so that we use them actively. And it's a tool that we're constantly using. So let's take a look at it. One of the first things that I would do is meet with the team. And what you see on the screen right now is a picture of a team that I worked with where we went with this team and defined some personas. The very first thing we did was define who are the types of people that would use the system. And this was a group that was defining a driver's licensing system. And so we had different personas for, somebody who's getting their first driver's license, and somebody else who was had a driver's license already, but needed to, get it updated, or someone who is going to get a motorcycle license or a boat license, or all these different licensing requirements. And so we came up with all these little pictures here on the back, you see, in the circle there. These are the different persona cards, and they were great. We actually gave them names, so this was Susie, and she lives in Bellevue, and her daddy bought her first car, and they would refer to them by their first name, and they made all kinds of like jokes and in kind of stories about the person, but all of that really informs how that person is going to use your system. So here's another look at the persona idea. So here's the persona. We've got Sarah, the CEO mom, and she has personal goals, right? She wants to watch kids. This is one that was created for a project that I do in my classes. So in my classes, sometimes I'll do different exercises, and in this one, we were creating a playground. And so all of the story persona information is in relation to that person and her goals around the playground. So she wants to watch the kids. She wants to provide educational, entertaining experiences, and getting a little break from the hectic life that she has as a CEO and mom. What's her situation? Well, she's 30 years old. She's the mother of 2, a boy and a girl. She works as an executive for Smith Corp. So you give her a backstory, right? Who is she? What does she do? What is she like, not like? And then what are the implications to her for the work that you're doing? So if you had this beautiful playground, in the case of this class, she could get a break. She could relax while her that's funny, it says her daughter. I have only daughters, and so everything is in reference to daughters in my life. But up here we had said that she has a boy and a girl, so I need to update that piece of documentation there. So it shares then that kind of the life of this person. So then you take this persona and you do something that's called mind mapping, right? So here's the mother. You might draw a little bubble. And then you draw, like, what are the values that she would get out of this system? In your case, whatever your product is that you're creating, what is the value that your customer, George the janitor, what would he get out of using your system? What are the things that he would do there, right? So he may go online and buy a book, or if you're Amazon, right? Go online, buy a book. You may go online and read reviews because he's thinking of buying something but not really committed to it yet. So you put all of those different things, and you just mind map it out. And each one of those things, so here you have safety and security is one thing that's important to a mother. So what else? This picture actually was taken from when I did this class last time in Oslo, Norway. And so they, safety and security was important to them. First aid information. You need to keep dogs and cats out of it and prevent injuries, make it a safe place for the kids. Keeping the kids in so that they're safe. So all these different elements. So here, hygiene is important to the mother. You have to have a place to wash your hands and a place to change diapers, right? If you didn't do this kind of mind mapping, you might not have that information out there for you. So if you were doing this, you might actually create the different personas who would be using your system and map out what are the different ways that they would interact with the system in the high-level kinds of ways, yeah. And so now we're a few minutes in, and I have to do the shameless plug for my business. So we are Whitewater Projects, and we do training and coaching. So we have an upcoming class here in Seattle. September 19th through 21st. And if you're in the area or could get up here, we'd love to have you at the class. You can find information at whitewaterprojects.com if you want to learn more about that. I also have the PMI ACP flashcards. So if you're studying for the ACP certification, you know that I'm the co-chair for PMI of the content support team. So you pretty good idea that the flashcards have good information in them. So take a look at those. The other thing that we do is we provide coaching services. So I'm actually on the site with a client right now that we're providing coaching services to. And I was thinking about this morning, and I put this picture in this morning, that, you know, sometimes people don't think they need a coach or think they can do stuff without a coach. And the Olympics going on this week makes me think about that. And so many of you probably saw this scene last night on the Olympics, right? The gymnast winning her gold, and the first thing she's doing is hugging her coach and thanking him. So there are some fantastic gymnasts in the world, but none of them would ever get to the Olympics without their coach. You know, you think about any sports team, they all have coaches. That's the kind of thing that we do, is provide an on-site or in-person or over the phone kind of personal coaching. The personal coaching usually is over the phone, so we can meet with you like once a week or once a month and do some personal coaching over the phone, or group coaching, on-site team coaching, that kind of thing, so we can help you get better as a team, right, as an organization. All right, back to it here. So then we would take that information that we had created in that story map, and we would expand it out and start creating stories. And this is that same team that you saw that was doing the licensing thing. They had over 200 stories that they created for this product, and we created something called a story map to help them understand it. And this took 3 days full-time with about, I don't know, 8 to 12 people that were working on it together at the same time. And it was an amazing time, though, because we started out, and those people were from different parts of the organization, and they were actually in that, wow, you know, those people now are working together. They're collaborating as a team. They're really getting how this works because they spent a couple days together and could see how my thing fits with your thing, fits with this other thing, and how it all works together to create the cohesive whole. And my thing may be, my particular pet feature or function might be lower in value on the list or lower in when it's going to be delivered, but I see how that works, and I agree to where it is, right? So let me walk you through this process. It's called story mapping, and what you see here, turn my computer so folks can see it here. This is a great tool, and I don't want you to miss it. Whoa, what happened there? There we go. Okay. Story mapping. So the story map is a way of visually displaying the stories that make up your backlog. So you may have a set of stories, and you think they define your whole product, but you're not really sure. So what we do is we take that persona. So we have Sally the soccer mom, and she's going to use this system in certain ways. So across, on the horizontal, I'm really concerned that people can't see my screen. There we go. Okay, you can see it. On the horizontal, you have time. So if someone was coming in to start using your system, this is the horizontal time, how they would go about using it. On the vertical, you deal with the frequency of use. Okay, so, and the gold stickers here, the yellow stickers, those are representing a sticky note. And those are showing you, okay, so in the flow, if I was a user and I was to come in and start using the system, I would start here and use this piece first, right? And then I would flow through this way across the system, right? Until I got to the end, and then I'd be done. So maybe this is Amazon, right? And so the first thing you do is you go onto the website, right? You don't log in first. You go to their website first. And then you want to add something to your cart. Well, they make you log in, and then you add it to your cart, and then, I don't know, you browse some more. You go to view your cart, then you go to checkout, and then you're done, right? What are other things you could do? Well, you could come to the website and look at reviews, right? This was adding something to your cart. Maybe you don't add it to your cart. Maybe you look at reviews. But you do that maybe less often than you add to cart, right? And so it's down lower on the frequency use. And then you might come back up here and use it, and it goes through the same flow. But the vertical is showing you frequency of use. So if it's something that is a feature within your system, but is not used very frequently, it's going to go lower and lower down on your list, right? So the least frequent things are going to be down here, and the most frequent things are going to be up at the top, right? So the top, then, you create what we call a backbone. So in this case, this would be the website. This would be, I don't know, let's get rid of some of these, so I'm going to whack that one. Say this is shopping, this is cart management, and this is checkout, right? So you'd have these big backbone kind of groupings that you'd kind of lump things into, and then the individual stories go underneath here. The ones that you put on the very top are what we call the walking skeleton. And walking skeleton is basically, the bare minimum that you can get to walk. In the lean startup movement, they call this walking skeleton the MVP. Okay, so I tend to use that terminology, MVP, because this is the minimally viable product, right? What's the bare minimum that we could create and deliver to our customers so that they could actually see and use the system, right? It's possible that this might include like one of these. That's okay, right? You just include it like that, and this is the MVP then. Sometimes you'll find that there's some feature that's way down here, but it's of such high value that you want to include it anyway, right? So I use the example that here in Washington State, we recently, if you were making a grocery store, right? And you could have this be your walking skeleton for the grocery store is that you have, a shopping availability, you have bread and milk, and one thing that people don't always buy when they go there nowadays is liquor. Now we have liquor. You can actually buy liquor at the grocery store these days. We weren't able to do that 6 months ago. So in that case, I would drop this down here, right? And because buying alcohol at the grocery store is a high value to the business product, I would include that in my minimally viable product. So that's one thing I want to release first, right? One thing I want to get out quickly. So I would include that one because it's it's got a high gross margin on it and allows me to make a lot of money as a company. All right. So that's kind of what I wanted to share with you today, was the idea of story mapping and personas, and then this. And I wish I had a picture of it, but I didn't put a picture of this in. this then goes on your wall. And these stories can be used in your release planning process. So this becomes your release 1. Then maybe go like this and say this is release 2, right? And then this is release 3. And the last thing we'll release is this. This is release 4. So you can see how this becomes a very powerful tool for doing release planning very quickly. And when you do it this way, there's almost no argument from people about why this is release 1 and why this is release 2 and what goes in here and what goes in there, because they can see it very clearly that, oh, geez, yeah, I mean, these are the most high priority things because the customer uses them the most, and they hang together as a cohesive unit. And I haven't had any trouble with clients, you know, having to argue about what is the release. They may argue about whether, you know, this should be the release or not, you know, whether something should be included within that release or not, but they don't argue about the big chunks, right? They don't argue about really large pieces of functionality. So that's what I wanted to share. I actually did a class on story mapping at the recent Kaizen camp here in Seattle, and it was very well received. I've been hearing back from people already that they were like, oh gosh, yeah, I've used this with my team, and they've been using it great. Another thing that you can do with this is when this goes up on your wall then, right? So this becomes an artifact. It's on your wall, big visible chart that you can see up there. And then when you start doing your sprint planning, right? So if you're using Agile, if you're using Scrum, sorry, and you want to do sprint planning, then you may come along and, oh, that's not what I want to do. Now I'm stuck with this little arrow thing. Help me. Okay, I guess I'll draw this arrow. You may come along and say, you know, I wanted to use this and this and this as my stories in my first sprint, right? So you actually, what I've seen some teams do is take this story and pull it off the wall, replace it with a placeholder, and then stick that into the product backlog when they're using a physical wall. So you can actually take it off, put it on the wall, it becomes a sticky. Then you see the story map. And then you can also see, because you're using those stickies that way, you can see what the work in process is that's on that map, right? You can see that, you know, because this story is replaced with a purple sticky now, you know that that one's in process. It's being processed right now. So that's another way of using the tool. And you put it back and you mark it with like a dot on the top or something like this to say that one's done, right? So you can then look at the board. You can see quickly, oh, all the ones with the dots in the corner, we know they're the ones that are done. So we don't have to worry about them anymore. And the ones that are purple or whatever color you use to replace, those are the ones that are in process. So we're good to go with that. Cool tool, huh?
Yeah. I'm looking forward to it.
Cool. All right, so I'm probably going to do this afternoon, it sounds like, or something like it. Does anybody have any questions on the line? I'd love to answer any questions, or if you've used this tool in the past, how that's worked for you, or how you might use it in the future. Love to hear from you. Or is it just afternoon in the summertime and everyone's just tired? All right, I'm not seeing a whole lot of questions, so with that, I'm going to call this a short webinar. It's only half an hour long today, but it was packed, I think, with good information. I hope you found it useful. If you have questions for me about how to use a story map or how to use the mind mapping tool or personas, please feel free to email me at joseph@whitewaterprojects.com. Email that's in every email you ever get from me. Right at the bottom it says joseph@whitewaterprojects.com, and it's got my phone number there and everything too. Feel free to call me or email me if you have questions. If you'd like to take a class, or interested in bringing a class to your location, you can get together the people. I can come to you. All right. Thank you for your time, and I'd love to talk to you again next month. All right. Bye-bye.